All right, today we're going to dive into a pretty fascinating puzzle, one that's probably sitting on millions of bookshelves all around the world. We're going to look at different versions of the Bible and, well, we're going to uncover some really startling and even contradictory readings.
So, let me just start by asking you this. Can a blessing also be a curse? I know, it sounds kind of like a riddle, but it's a genuine question that pops up when you look at just a single verse in the book of Genesis. You see, depending on which Bible you happen to open, the answer to that question could actually be yes. It all starts with one verse that somehow, someway, has two completely opposite meanings.
Okay, take a look at this. It really shows the stark contrast perfectly. We're in Genesis 27, and Isaac is speaking to his son Esau. Now, in the good old King James Version, the KJV, it says, "Thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth." Pretty clear, right? That's a blessing. But then you pick up a modern translation, like the ESV or the NIV, and that same verse says, "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness," which, that's not a blessing at all. It's the complete opposite.
So that brings us right to the heart of our whole explainer today. How can the same book, the very same verse, say two things that are just diametrically opposed? It's a real head-scratcher, but there's a very clear answer once you know where to look.
So, how is this possible? I mean, really? Well, the source of almost all of these changes really comes down to one thing: the specific ancient manuscripts that the translators were working from.
So when we say underlying manuscripts, what are we even talking about? Think of them like the original source code. They're the ancient Hebrew and Greek scrolls that scholars use to create a translation. You see, for over 1,000 years, everything was copied by hand. And because of that, scribes could make little mistakes, or maybe add a note in the margin that a later scribe thought was part of the text and copied it right in. The key thing to get is that the King James Version was translated from one family of these manuscripts, while most modern versions are based on a different, and in some cases older family of manuscripts that have been discovered since then.
Okay, now that we have that foundation, let's explore what I'm calling a gallery of contradictions. You're about to see this isn't just a one-off issue. It pops up in all sorts of ways, from changing people's names to altering entire events. All right, here's a question for you. One that might challenge a story many of us have known since we were kids. Who really killed Goliath?
This is a perfect example. We all know the story of David and Goliath, and the KJV lines up with that. In 2 Samuel, it says a warrior named Elhanan killed the brother of Goliath. Okay, no conflict there. But then you read the ESV, and it says Elhanan struck down Goliath himself. And just like that, you've got two different people being credited with killing the exact same giant.
You know, sometimes the change is as tiny as a single letter. In the book of Colossians, the KJV mentions a man named Nymphas and the church that met in his house, but the ESV and NIV read Nympha and the church in her house. That one little difference completely changes our historical understanding of who was hosting this early Christian community. Was it a man or was it a woman?
So we've seen how names and identities can be affected, but the changes actually go even deeper. They alter the very actions of the characters and the outcomes of some pretty key events.
Take this, for example. After King David won a battle, what did he do with the idols they captured? The KJV is very clear. He and his men burned them. An act of righteous destruction. But in the ESV and NIV, they carried them away. That suggests they took them as spoils of war, a completely different action with totally different motivations.
And this pattern of direct opposites is actually quite common. In Isaiah, a nation's joy is either not increased or it is increased. In Proverbs, being friendly is either a good thing or it leads to ruin. And get this, a north wind either driveth away rain or it brings forth rain. I mean, the contradictions are right there in black and white. So, after seeing all these examples, we've got to ask the big question. Why does any of this matter? It's time to go from looking at these specific texts to thinking about the broader takeaways.
Look, these aren't just trivial details for scholars to argue about. First off, they can dramatically affect how someone interprets theology. I mean, a blessing turning into a curse is a huge shift in meaning. It also really shines a light on just how complex translation is, and it reveals that choosing a Bible version isn't just about what style you like, it's about choosing which source text you're reading from. And honestly, understanding this just encourages a deeper curiosity about the rich history of these ancient writings.